What's going on, everyone? This is Daryl Andrews, Coach D, coming to you with a new title, as you can see. But I'm going to call this time on LinkedIn Live, and which is also projected out through StreamYard, which I use to all the different platforms that are out there. Wanted to kind of land my ship on a title for my talks when I have these conversations. And a lot of people ask me, like, Coach, what's more important, motivation or strategy? And I always tell people both are equally as important, because you need, as many of you have heard me say before, motivation is the fuel, but strategy is the vehicle. And one thing I've had to learn in my 20 years of this work is that you need both. You need both. I mean, you can be as motivated as all get out, but don't accomplish anything. But you're motivated. And that's kind of dangerous, to be honest with you, when you're just motivated and don't do anything, because now that becomes frustration, because you have this desire, this dream, or this goal to accomplish something, and you're motivated, but you're not doing anything. So I want to talk a little bit about the power of motivation, but give some education on motivation today. And so we call our time together the motivated mindset, because in my work, no matter what it is we're doing, we focus on both. We focus on both. And so hello to you, Facebook user. Again, I see Facebook user, but I don't see the name. So good to see you. Thank you for coming on board. Tomorrow, I'm going to have a friend of mine on, Ryan Drummond, who I formed a business partnership with, and we're going to be doing some powerful stuff together. I mean, powerful stuff in the motivation and technology space. And this guy is the best. And I'm telling you, we're going to, you'll see as it comes out, it's going to be powerful. So we're joining forces. We're bringing motivation and technology together to create something powerful. So stay tuned for that. But hey, Kelly, now we got you. Hey, Kelly. How's it going? Good to see. Good. Hope all is well. It's been a long time, right? And so, but this motivated mindset is a lot of what we're going to be talking about during my time is going to be limited to this title, this topic, because either it's going to be something motivational or it's going to be something that's going to deal with mindset and strategy and focus when we come together during our, brief time doing these LinkedIn lives. So this is going to be a great lesson on leadership for anyone that's a leader out there, be it a parent, be it a manager, be it a director, be it president, CEO, coach of a team. It doesn't matter. What we're going to talk about today, we know of, many of us do, but many of us never learn this. And so I had a conversation with a customer. A lot of times my talks come from conversations. And I had a conversation with a customer where we were talking about leadership and how do you continually inspire the best out of your people that's on your team. And I said, if you really want to learn how to regularly inspire people on your teams, your fellow teammates or whatever, study John Wooden, who was the former coach at UCLA. Study him. Study him. If any of you out there have ever read his material, pop that in the chat feature. Yeah, Coach, I'm familiar with Coach D. I'm familiar with John Wooden. Study him. This I shared with my customer. I said, because he came up with something that many of you have heard me talk about, but I'll mention again, where they asked him the question, how did he win 7 NCAA championships in a row and 10 in total? And with players such as Lou Alcindor, became Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Walton and on and on and on. And he broke it down into one statement. And I'm going to type it in this chat here so you can get it, so you can read. You can Google it yourself, right? But he called it customized motivation. John Wooden called it customized motivation. And this is what he said. He said, myself as the head coach and my assistant coaches have learned that you can't coach all your players the same way. Some players need a push. Some players need a hug. Some players need a high five. They all need certain things, but Great leadership understands there is not one way of motivating people. Now, let me clarify this. You can get results multiple ways, but the reality is sometimes the results that you get come as a result of damaging somebody. So that's really not a good result. And so you may get the outcome you want, but the person is not better off because of their interaction. So we're going to talk about are the different forms of motivation and how, yes, some people get things done, but some people get things done at the expense of others because they don't realize that what they're doing is actually damaging the person instead of helping them, even though they get the outcome that they desire. So we'll talk about that when we talk about introjected leadership in just a moment. But the two forms that most people are familiar with are extrinsic, right, and intrinsic. All right, extrinsic and intrinsic. Now, if anyone's out there listening, any of you ever heard of these two? Have anyone ever heard of them, and what do they mean from your perspective? If you've heard this before, these terms when it comes to motivation, extrinsic and intrinsic. And this is, let me break them down a little bit so you can understand them a little more clearly here. Extrinsic is an extrinsic motivation, something that's more of the outward. In other words, I want to buy a car, I want to get a paycheck, I want a bonus, and so a lot of companies and organizations use extrinsic motivation very well because they know that a person is aspiring towards something extrinsically. I want to buy a home, I want to take a trip, so I'm going to be motivated to save, motivated, I want to move out of my apartment to a house or take on a second job. And, so it's like all kinds of extrinsic motivators. All right. And I'm just skimming the surface over a few. So that's extrinsic motivation. So intrinsic motivation is what it sounds like. It's internal. It's something inside of me that's driving me to do what I do. Now, my son and I have, and I'm just enjoying him while he's home. He's at Virginia Military Institute, just home for a few weeks, and he's going to go back. But recently, we've been watching a lot of boxing documentaries. And the two that are so interesting to me is one, Muhammad Ali, and two, Manny Pacquiao. Some of you may not have heard of Manny Pacquiao, but if you haven't, I don't know what planet you've been on. But what's nice about watching these documentaries is both of them, which probably made them two of the greatest fighters that ever lived, both of them were intrinsically motivated. Now, Manny's situation, Manny Pacquiao, was intrinsically motivated because he came from a very poor area of the Philippines. I mean, beyond poor, had nothing, and he had an abusive dad. And so he ran away from home at 14, didn't know what he was going to do, didn't know where he was going. But I think he went to Manila to start training to box. He said that he felt as though boxing was going to be his way out. And so he lived homeless. He slept in the gym and everything else. But he wasn't like a lot of people in the sport or in athletics doing it just because he wanted to get rich so he can buy him a big house, big car, private jet, and all that kind of stuff, even though he made that kind of money in his career. He did it because he wanted to help the impoverished people in his country. This guy would literally stand up and line up and give people money. Somebody said he would give away $300 million because he said, 200 million is plenty for me. He made 500 million, let's say within an 8-year, 7-year span. He said, I can live off of 200 million. He just wanted to give. So when he fought in that, and I was telling my son this when we were watching it, when you would see him fight, he would fight with such a tenacity because he was fighting for a reason. It was intrinsic. It was something that was inside of him that was a byproduct of his upbringing that led him to fight with everything that was inside of him, everything. And boy, did he fight. It was incredible watching this. And it gave me a deep level of respect for him because I didn't know this story. I just knew about the boxer. I didn't know the story. So that's Manny Pacquiao. Muhammad Ali, he got into it because he liked boxing, but then boxing became a vehicle for him to promote causes for Black Americans. And so he saw what he was doing as a way of having influence to speak to the injustices that impact the black race. So when he would get in there, that's what it was. So what I'm trying to say is, using boxing as an analogy, they were both intrinsically motivated. They didn't care. Muhammad never talked about cars and homes. He lived in some expensive homes, and you never heard him talk about it. Like, you got a lot of athletes, that's all they talk about is the homes they live in, the cars they live in, because that's what they're doing it for. And okay, and more power to them if that's with them. But the ones that were intrinsically motivated, there was something deeper. And so sometimes we want to do better in life because we want a better life for our kids, or we want to do something in life because we want to be a greater help to our community, or I want to do something in life because it's just something I want to do for myself. It's something that I intrinsically feel a sense of purpose around. All right. So that's another form of motivation. So we have the extrinsic motivation that you just heard of, and we have the intrinsic motivation. Again, if you've heard of those, in the chat feature, tell me what your thoughts are. Okay. And that could be at any time, even when we're done with this. I hope people will take a look at this with our new name, the motivated mindset. All right, because that's who we are. We're going to put motivated mindsets, because it all starts here. I can inspire a person all day long, but until they get the mindset to move forward, they never move forward. Okay, and that's when motivation itself becomes frustrating. So here's a couple that we need to think about, because these two, I don't think are the best forms of motivation. But I'm sharing these because I think it's best if leaders can learn and individuals can learn. We don't want these things to necessarily have to motivate us. And sometimes, unfortunately, they have to, one of them, because it's out of our control. So another form is called introjected motivation, okay? I just learned about these recently. All right, introjected motivation. So this one is kind of like, intrinsic, but here's the difference. Managers, leaders, all kinds of people, spouses can do it, children can do it to parents can do it to children, community, a person, in political power can do it to another person. It's a form of motivation that's induced by guilt. You guilt a person into doing something. All right. It's sort of negative in nature. A boss coming down hard on someone because they didn't do the job the right way, and really using that as a tool to say, if you don't do it the right way, there could be a chance you don't have a job here. So now that person is going to do it 9 times out of 10, but they're typically doing it out of fear. They're not doing it out of hunger, determination, motivation, or anything. They are fearful. And so introjected motivation is really that fear motivation. And that's the worst kind of motivation in the world. You see it in companies. People leave stressed with medical issues. Anybody out there ever see that before? I mean, think about it. Just where a person is literally coerced into accomplishing something. All right. That's called introjected motivation. So let me tell you this is really radical, because I'm not going to mention the company's names, but I'm big on, like I said, looked at the boxing documentaries, but I'm also looking at the history of people who built big companies. And a lot of the people who built these big companies used introjected motivation. They were just hammering people, to get the best out of them, and pushing and prodding and putting in fear. And you couldn't talk to this person. It was interesting. I was talking to someone a little earlier today at my office, and there's a luncheon that was taking place here. And we were talking about how we, worked on jobs where, you had certain national directors or regional directors that, and for them, it was all about fear motivation. Like that person walked in the room and everybody would get quiet. Oh, there's, so-and-so, don't say anything, because, you gotta, it's almost like you couldn't even be yourself. And I was jokingly telling them about one time I was at this event, and there's this guy that came into this event. I was volunteering to be a part of it, and he was a judge, and I didn't know the guy was a judge. I mean, literally, and this is kind of off the beaten track, but just to show you how people fear. And I was sharing with him how, the judge was so offended that I didn't know he was a judge, and he got huffed and he puffed and he was angry. He was trying to motivate me to respect him. And, one of the people came over that knew who he was, and the part of this group I was with, and said, "Oh man, that's Judge so-and-so here, man. Make sure because we had to put these little colored, dots you would have. Well, I think call them dots, but on the name tag of the person based upon what type of career they had, and those sticky things. And so I didn't know who the person was. I said, "Well, what's your occupation?" And boy, he went off on a tirade. Almost like trying to force me to respect who he was. And I said, "Well, okay, well, I'm sorry, I don't know who you are." But back to this introjected motivation is a tough form of motivation because some people use it. Some people say that they're successful with it, but in actuality, they've just damaged people with it. And that's a terrible form of motivation. It really is. It really is. You can still get the same results with intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Some parents do it with their kids. They don't show any emotions, no empathy. Do this, do that, get this done. And then you wonder why the child grew up and don't want anything to do with you. Because what you've done is you got it done. You got it done. But that child did not benefit or gain emotionally from what you did. Or in the company, the company grew, became bigger. And I'll say this again, even in the church grew, got bigger, but you'd have like one of my friends said, a trail of dead bodies, because all it was fear motivation. So we gotta bounce on this one, introjected motivation, because it may produce results, but it's damaging to the people. Like if you're building an organizational team, you don't want a bunch of people that's running around there in fear. You really don't. You want people that are going to want to do it because it's inside of them. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't push them sometimes. That's different. Okay. All right. And another type of motivation, the last one, is identified motivation. Identified motivation. Now, this is a motivation that we all don't want, and that is something happens to us and we become motivated because of what happened. Got a diagnosis of something, cancer, a diagnosis of, some diabetes, or diagnosis of something, and now I'm gonna change my diet. You know what I mean? I'm gonna stop smoking those cigarettes. And so doctor been saying for years, stop smoking them and don't do it. But once you get that diagnosis, boom, do it. I've seen this time and time again where people just will be told they're not supposed to do something. They do it until they get a diagnosis, and they change. Or it could be some other things in our lives, not just medical. But that's identified motivation, where something has happened in my life that I've identified. And now I'm going to do everything I can to succeed in like dealing with, this crisis or situation. So you got extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. Those are the two best. It's good to be motivated from the inside, and nothing wrong with being motivated externally. I want a better house. I want a better life. I want a better, nothing wrong with that. Then you got the introjected motivation, which is the negative, where you force people into, doing saying or doing something. And then the last one is identify, where you like a diagnosis. So I just want to talk about that today on the Motivated Mindset with Coach D. And so, because I realize it all starts with mindset. I was on a call with one of my diversity, equity, and inclusion customers, and we were just talking about building the foundation of the work. I said something that's very clear, plain and clear. If we don't focus on mindsets, the rest of it is really a moot point, because you don't change people by just simply saying, let's do this, or let's talk about this, or let's train on that. We got to tie the training and the coaching into mindsets, because people who think the way they think about race and gender or across the board, there's a reason why they think that way. And many times they don't even know why they think that way. A lot of times it's based upon upbringing and community that they were around, things like that. So you can't. So mindset is the epicenter of that too. It's the epicenter of core values integration. We do a lot of that work. We're helping to integrate their core values. That is a part of mindset. It's about teamwork. It's the way I see the team. Winning teams have one thing in mind: winning. You don't necessarily look at the goal of trying to, have these perfect teammates and everybody getting along. Yes, there's got to be some synergy amongst the team, but their goal is to win. And so what I mean by that is that they will practice, they will strategize, they would, look at things in a certain way to primarily goal is to win. And so with teams that have a winning mindset, they start to inspire their teammates. The coaches get inspired, the players inspire the coaches. Same thing, the managers inspiring the workers inspiring the managers, the directors. It's just this whole mindset thing. So you're going to get a lot on this mindset piece as we interact with each other over the next year or so. So that's all I have for you today. It's just keep in mind there's those four types of motivation: extrinsic, intrinsic, introjected, and identified. And take this information if you're a leader and go back and work on it. If you have any questions, I said put my email in there. You can always, my website. You can always reach out to us and go to our contact us page, and we'll schedule some time to interact with you. And so keep it in mind that motivation is not just limited to one thing. I've done countless motivational speeches, but then I've seen countless motivational people who never even attended a speech that's doing some out of this world things with their lives because they were intrinsically or extrinsically motivated. You see. So that's all we got for today. Hope this information is helpful. Have a passionate day. Until